Thank you, Annika. Thank you so much to Rainbodhi Poland. I'm so thrilled to be here with you today. And I'm so impressed to see so many friends joining us. So Rainbodhi is a spiritual friendship group for LGBTQIA plus Buddhists. And it's a wonderful thing that you queer Buddhists in Poland can feel connected to an international community of queer Buddhists and to know that you are welcome and that you belong in your Buddhist community. So I'm coming to you today from Sri Lanka, and it's very warm here. So it may look like I'm crying a little bit, but I'm just sweating a little bit. But I do have a feeling of joy in my heart to see you here together today. Rainbodhi had a connection with Poland, in that one day, out of the blue, I was approached by someone who wanted to translate our inclusivity guide, Welcoming the Rainbow, into Polish. And I was really surprised. I didn't really have much of an idea of what was happening in terms of Buddhism in Poland, but I was really glad that someone had come forward who understood the importance of making sure all Buddhists, regardless of sexuality or gender, were made welcome in the growing Buddhist community in Poland. And so this is some of the values that we hope Rainbodhi will bring about within our Buddhist communities, but also more broadly within our social communities outside of our religious or spiritual sphere. This is values of inclusion. We want to make sure that we include everyone. And so I just want to say to you today, whether you're lesbian, gay, bi, trans, non-binary, whether you're intersex, whether you're queer, whether you're asexual, you are welcome and you belong. And it's really important that we know that we belong, that we know that we're welcome, because religion has such a poor record, historically speaking, when it comes to our rainbow community. And so we need to be explicitly inclusive. Tell people, yes, you're welcome. This space is for you. You belong. And so when it comes to Rainbodhi, we want to embody this value of inclusion, whether you're old or young, regardless of your skin color, regardless of your body shape, your body's ability, you're welcome. Regardless of your gender or sexuality, you're welcome. So this is the value of inclusion. Another value that we have is the value of compassion. And this is going to be the theme of our meditation and our talk today. And the last value that we have is wisdom. And this is something that all Buddhists aspire to. This value of wisdom points towards the Buddha's teachings and the ability for us to understand the things that the Buddha saw and embody them in our lives to attain enlightenment. And so today, I want to make sure that you know that you belong. And I want to tell you that not only are you connected to a global community of queer Buddhists through Rainbodhi, you are also part of the Buddhist history of queer Buddhists. Did you know Did you know that Buddhism has a queer history, an LGBTQIA history? Did you know that? Well, of course. Of course it does. Because there has always been queer people. There's always been lesbians. There's always been gays. There's always been bis. There's always been trans and gender diverse people. There's always been intersex people, queer people, asexual people. There's always been people from our community throughout history. And unfortunately, from time to time, those voices, those people, those uh, personalities, characters have been forgotten or deliberately covered up throughout history. And so from time to time in Buddhism, we see little glimpses of this queer past. Early that there were same-sex attracted people. We understand from the earliest texts that there were people with different genders. And so we are part of this long history of queerness in Buddhism. There's been queer monks and nuns. There's been queer lay supporters. There's been queer translators of the Buddhist texts, queer people helping with community, building organizations, building temples. We are part of this history. And so one of the things that I'm trying to do with Rainbodhi is to make sure that our voices are not forgotten, that our people, our community, our queer family are not forgotten, that we celebrate our queer history, that we celebrate our queer Buddhist present, and we celebrate our queer Buddhist future. In this way, we make sure that our voices are heard and not forgotten. And that's why this value of inclusion is so important for Rainbodhi. That's why when we have events like this one, we always are queer-centered. That means we have queer speakers, queer Buddhist speakers. We want to hear about the experiences of queer Buddhists because these are not experiences we find in our regular spiritual communities. We want to raise up queer Buddhist voices because sometimes these voices are not heard in regular spiritual communities. We want to celebrate our queer spirituality because sometimes our queerness, our queer spirituality is not celebrated by our religious communities. And so Rainbodhi is a place where we bring together these two aspects of ourselves, our queerness and our spirituality. And we celebrate both of those things. And this can be a very beautiful thing. For many of us, we might have felt that we had to make a choice between our spiritual self and our queer self. We might have felt if we turned to religion that we couldn't talk about those parts of ourselves that are important, like our partner or our struggle with the legal system, the oppressive nature of homophobia and transphobia in society. We might have felt that these were things that weren't welcome in our religious communities. And often it's the religious communities who are perpetrating this oppression. We might not have felt that we were welcome in religious communities. And so that's why I want you to know that Rainbodhi is a place for you where Every single part of you is welcome. And we honor those parts of you that are gay, lesbian, bi, trans, whatever. We honor those parts of you. And so this is the importance of inclusion. And this is linked to the next value that we're going to explore in detail today, compassion. Compassion is a word which means that we are concerned about someone who is suffering. We feel this sympathy. We feel this tenderness towards them. The Buddha said it's like when you see someone in the desert and they're sick and they're starving, they have no water, they look like they're lost. But when you see this person suffering, a feeling should arise within you. When we see suffering, we want this feeling of compassion to arise. And this is important because so often we might not care about other people's suffering. We might think, if it doesn't affect me, I don't care. It doesn't bother me what happens to others. We might only have compassion for people who we have a relationship to, people in our family, people in our community. We might not have compassion for others who we have no vested interest in. But this is more about us than those other people, right? So in Buddhism, one of the things that we learn is that compassion is for all living beings, without distinction. Compassion is one of the 4 Brahma Viharas, the 4 abodes of Brahma. Brahma is a kind of deity, a kind of God. And they're also referred to as the Apamanyas, the limitless, the boundless. These are states that have no limit, that are infinite. And when something is infinite, it's not limited to a few people that we know. It's not limited to people in our community, family. When something is limitless, it encompasses all living beings. And so compassion is something that we can feel. It's an emotion. Sometimes when we meet Buddhists, when we meet different people on the spiritual path, they think that emotions are bad. Get rid of emotions. That if we want to overcome suffering, that we shouldn't worry about anyone else. Just focus on yourself. Put your oxygen mask on first, and then maybe help others later. But one of the things that you often hear in Buddhist circles is people turning their backs on social issues, social concerns, saying, it's not spiritual, we've got to get to the end of suffering. Just focus on your own meditation, realize Nibbana for yourself. Don't worry about these political things. Don't worry about these social things. Don't worry about other people. Just focus on yourself. Perhaps you've met Buddhists like that who don't concern themselves with society, don't concern themselves with the suffering of others. They're very much focused on themselves and their own practice. These people are often the kinds of people who also look down upon things like emotions. Get rid of emotions. Don't feel. But this is not how the Buddha taught. The Buddha taught the usefulness of emotions. When we think about the meditation path. It's full of beautiful, positive mind states, emotional mind states like joy, happiness, bliss. These are powerful feelings, powerful states of mind. Happiness is an emotion. And the same with the Brahma, divine abodes of love, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. These are all things that we can feel. This is an emotion that we need to feel within ourselves. We need to feel this compassion. It's not theoretical. It's not abstract. It's something that we feel within ourselves. And our role as a meditator is to take this tiniest little feeling of compassion and to develop it. This is bhavana, the development. We grow it. It's like a seed. We water it, we tend to it, we make sure that it's growing bigger and bigger. And then we see in our own mind that this small little piece of compassion has grown bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's so big, it's so powerful, it embraces all living beings without distinction, that it has become that apamanya, that limitless state, boundless, that the compassion that we have in ourselves can fill the universe. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to practice some compassion meditation. And we're going to practice compassion meditation, firstly, by having compassion for ourselves. Then we're going to generate compassion for our queer siblings, for our rainbow family, lesbians, gays, bis, transsexuals, non-binary, queers, intersex, and asexual, as well as our allies, people who support the queer community, people who support our rainbow family. And then we're going to have compassion for all living beings, including those who have hurt us, who've harmed us, including people who are homophobic or transphobic. Because all living beings want happiness, want to be free from suffering. And even those people who hate us, they are suffering. And if we're not careful, our mind can become hateful towards them. Our mind can wish ill, harm towards them, can wish cruelty towards them. And if that happens to us, we're no better than them. We just have a mind of hate, of cruelty. And so instead, we abandon cruelty, hate, ill will. We abandon it and we have compassion. That's not to say that we shouldn't work towards removing oppression, prejudice, that we shouldn't work towards stopping harmful actions that hurt our queer community. It doesn't mean we shouldn't protest or work towards changing laws, things like that. It just means that we work from a place of care, of compassion, rather than hate and anger and ill will. And so this is why it's very important to develop this mind of compassion so that we abandon the things that are unbeneficial in our own mind and cultivate something which is very beautiful, which protects our mind from unskillful states like hate, ill will, anger, cruelty. It protects our mind from those states and instead develops a beautiful mind, a positive mind, a mind that is so powerful, so powerful, so beautiful. This mind is so much better than a mind of hate. It's so much better than a mind of ill will, so much better than cruelty. This mind leads towards peace, leads towards happiness. This is the kind of mind that will help us attain enlightenment and to free ourselves from suffering, and hopefully help others also move towards kindness, compassion, and to also come out of suffering and attain enlightenment too. So that's an introduction to why we're practicing compassion meditation. We're going to meditate for about 20, 25 minutes, and we're going to ease ourselves into this practice. So we're going to spend the first part of the meditation just becoming more peaceful and calm. And then I'll guide the next part of the meditation, the compassion section. Okay? Good. Let's do some meditation. So take a comfortable posture, something that works for you, where you can sit comfortably and see if you can make the back nice and straight. You can be upright, but not uptight. And just dip the head slightly, dip the chin slightly, close the eyes. Take a few deep breaths in and out. Already this deep breathing and this pause coming to stillness. Already this has changed so much. The eyes are closed. Our body is still. We can just sit here. We can be here and now. And so we let go. Let go of everything else. Let go. Let go of the week that's been, or the busyness, all the activities you've done, all of the dramas, all of the fun, all of the troubles. It's all now in the past. And so let go. Allow yourself to be free from the past. And no need to worry about the future. No need to worry about what's to come. Not planning, thinking. Allow yourself to be free from the future. By letting go of the past, letting go of the future, we can be here now. We can be present, aware, but relaxed, peaceful, comfortable. So spend a few moments now relaxing, letting go of tension and tightness in the body. Allowing the mind to settle, to become calm. Perhaps the mind is a little busy thinking about this and that. It's okay. This is just the habit pattern of our mind, the result of our busyness, our daily lives. It's okay. Don't worry. Just keep on allowing the body to relax. You'll see the mind becomes more peaceful too, settling naturally, not forcing, not punishing the mind, just allowing the mind to settle naturally, naturally becoming more relaxed, naturally becoming more calm, more peace, all by itself, just by pausing, letting go, being mindful, Perhaps you notice that it feels good. It feels good to pause, to sit still. It feels good to relax. It feels good to let go, to be present, aware. Already we've let go of some suffering. We've relaxed the body, allowed the mind to become calm, peace. Practicing meditation is compassion for ourselves. Practicing meditation helps us come out of suffering. No beings want to suffer. All beings experience pain, hurt. All beings suffer. And me too. We all have suffering. Problems, difficulties, relationships, mental patterns, anxieties, worries, fears, doubts, insecurities, problems at work, on. None of us want to suffer. It's out of compassion for ourselves, knowing the suffering in our own lives, that gives rise to the wish, may I be free from suffering. May I be free from suffering. May I be free from suffering. So in this moment, we let go. We let go of those things that cause us to suffer. Just in this moment, feel some freedom from those things. A loosening, a letting go. May I be free from suffering. May I have compassion for myself. May I have tenderness, kindness, concern for my well-being. And this is a feeling, an emotion. May I be free from suffering. Our heart opening. A warm embrace, a hug, a feeling of goodness. May I be free from suffering. May I have compassion for myself. We feel this emotion, this concern, this tenderness, this kindness growing, becoming stronger. And so we come back to that contemplation that all beings long to be free from suffering. That all beings wish to be free from suffering. And we extend that compassion within ourselves to our queer community, our siblings everywhere, the lesbians, the gays, the bi people, the trans, gender diverse, gender fluid, gender queer, non-binary. May all these beings be free from suffering. The queers, the questioning, People who are intersex, may they be free from suffering. And asexuals, allies, may they all be free from suffering. Our heart opens and embraces our queer community, our queer family, our siblings around the world. We hug them with our heart. May they be free from suffering. We feel that compassion growing stronger, more power within us, growing bigger. This compassion embraces all on this earth without distinction. Our community is strong, powerful. Our compassion is growing bigger. We can embrace all beings with tenderness, concern, with care, knowing that all beings here suffer. Even those who are homophobic, transphobic, causing so much suffering to others, they too suffer. They wish for happiness. And our heart has no hate, no anger, no ill will, no thoughts of cruelty. Our compassion is so big, powerful. Like a great river, great lake, or an ocean puts out a match or fire. Our compassion overwhelms those who oppress and harm us. Compassion is bigger than their anger, and our are freeing from gaze as we embrace all beings with care, tenderness. We also have compassion for the animals in the ocean, animals of land, animals underground and in the air. They suffer. They wish for happiness, to be free from pain, free from fear. And our compassion embraces them. May they be free from suffering. May they be free from suffering. May they be free from suffering. Our compassion is growing stronger and stronger, bigger and bigger. It radiates out through the darkness of space. It penetrates deep, deep into the solar system, the galaxies around us. It's so strong and so powerful. It reaches and fills the entire universe. Our compassion is vast. It's immeasurable. It overwhelms hostility, ill will, cruelty, anger. Our compassion is for every living being in the universe. Our mind embraces all beings with tenderness and concern. Our heart hugs every living being. We give rise to this beautiful wish. May all beings everywhere experience my compassion. May all beings everywhere be free from suffering. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings be free from suffering. And now we draw our mind back through space to our galaxy, our solar system, back here to this place you're in now, surrounded by our friends, our queer siblings, back to yourself, back to your heart. And that feeling of compassion fading now. That feeling of concern and tenderness lingering like an echo, lingering in your heart. Knowing that compassion is there. It is there inside of you whenever you need it. It is there. And it's not small. It's big. It's vast. Your compassion can fill the universe. And it's there inside of you. It's there for yourself and for all living beings. And so now we can relax our awareness. And just before we finish, spend a few moments reflecting upon what we just did, still with your eyes closed. How was it to practice compassion meditation? Did you get a sense of the feeling of compassion, the emotion of compassion? And did you see it growing within yourself? What were some of the challenges you had in this meditation? And lastly, how do you feel now? How do you feel? Is it different from when we began? Why? What did you do? What happened? What changed? And so when we reflect in this way, it's very useful. We start to understand our mind. We start to understand also the process of meditation. And this will help us in our future practice. So now you can relax your awareness, come back to this virtual room that we're in. You can open your eyes. If you want, you can turn on your cameras again. So how was that? Was that okay? Is everyone okay? Yeah? So this compassion is very powerful, and it's part of the spiritual path. Sometimes in our Buddhist communities, the Brahma Viharas, the abodes of the gods, the abodes of Brahma, or these apamanyas, these states that are limitless, boundless. Sometimes these are kind of pushed to the side or, put in the background, these mind states of love, metta, compassion, karuna, sympathetic joy, mudita, and equanimity, upekkha. These are the four Brahma Viharas, the four apamanyas, the four limitless states. But they are not just something to be kind of put at the side of our practice. The Buddha taught that these were very powerful meditations, very powerful ways of developing the mind. And so sometimes, again, I'll say this a few times because lately I've been coming across Buddhists who are harsh on themselves and on others, who don't like emotions or feelings, and they think they have to be like non-smiling statues, with no feelings, no emotions. But this isn't a very healthy way. It's not a very healthy way to practice the spiritual path. One of the markers of progress on the spiritual path is that our mind is becoming more loving, more compassionate, more joyful. This is an indication, because if our mind is more angry, more cruel, this is an obvious sign that we're going in the wrong direction. But if we are becoming a little bit too unfeeling, if we are becoming unconcerned, a sign we're not making progress. We shouldn't care about others. We should have kindness and compassion towards others and within us. Others as being irrelevant to our practice. Others, the people around us, are very useful for us. We generate a mind of love towards them and compassion. When they're happy, we're happy too. This is mudita, that sympathetic joy, that appreciative joy. And so this is something that we can do in our daily life. We don't need to take time out to sit down on our meditation cushion. We can practice these mind states in our daily life by doing kind actions towards others. I was just thinking the other day, fly in my room, and there's no way for it to get out, right? And I was reflecting that I held a little creature for so many years now. Even before I became a monk, I've never deliberately killed a little creature, a bug, an insect. And my heart was full of tenderness towards this poor little fly, full of love, full of compassion. And I said to it, we've got to get you out. If you stay in here, you're going to starve. You won't be able to live in this room. And so I found a way to kind of catch it and I put it up. And so this is the kind of mind we want to develop, right? This kind of instinct, an instinct towards compassion. And it's something that is very beautiful on the spiritual path. And I see it all the time. There's a lot of street dogs here in Sri Lanka. They're mangy. They've got, skin problem, and they lose their fur, and they're skinny. They've got lots of bites on them from other dogs. They get infected. They've got many problems. And one of these dogs was doing very badly. And so there's a monk here. He's actually a Belgian monk. And he decided to help this dog. And he has been caring like a nurse for this dog. And in the short time that I've been here, just 3 weeks I've been here, that skinny, mangy dog is very ugly looking creature. He had no fur. It had, a lot of blood. It had maggots, and it was a mess. But through the care that this monk had given, this dog is now wagging its tail. It looks healthy and it's happy. And this is compassion, right? May this being be free from suffering. And this is at the very root of Buddhist practice. The Buddha himself, after he attained enlightenment, he had some thinking to do. He was sitting there enjoying the bliss of enlightenment, and he thought, should I share this knowledge with other living beings? I mean, just think about it, right? Like, he could have just been quiet, just enjoyed his enlightenment with no troubles, no bothers. We call this a Pacceka Buddha, a private Buddha, a Buddha who has someone who has attained enlightenment but doesn't teach. And so he was thinking, there's beings out there in the world, but they probably won't understand. And it will be very difficult for me. Sure, it's hard. It's a question. Working with people, that's hard work too, right? People are so difficult. And so the Buddha had this choice. Should I teach? And there's a story that says that the Brahma Sahampati, a divine being, saw that the Buddha was questioning, should I teach? Should I not teach? And came down from the heavens and implored the Buddha, please teach. He said, there are beings with little dust in their eyes who will understand and who without the Dharma will perish. And the Buddha looked out and saw, yes, there are beings with little dust in their eyes who will understand. And out of compassion, he decided to teach the Dharma. And he taught the Dharma for 40 years, always teaching, always sharing his knowledge, dealing with problems, dealing with people, dealing with difficulties, even up to his final moments. People had questions. The Buddha is there, dying, about to enter parinirvana, the final nirvana, the extinguishment. And even then, as he's lying there, people are coming up with questions about this or that. And the Buddha says, yes, bring them. And he answers their questions out of compassion, out of kindness. And so this is something that is fundamental to Buddhist practice, this concern for others, this concern for others' well-being. And this is why this value that Rainbodhi has of compassion is an important part of our work as queer Buddhists. We have this value of inclusion, compassion, and wisdom. Inclusion, we want to hear Buddhist voices. We want to highlight Buddhist experiences, queer Buddhist experiences. We want to hear queer Buddhist voices, highlight queer Buddhist experiences. We want to celebrate queer Buddhist spirituality. And then we want to have compassion, where Rainbodhi exists out of compassion. We're advocates for ourselves. We care about ourselves as a queer Buddhist. We care about our queer Buddhist community. We care about making sure our Buddhist spaces are compassionate. That's why it's so wonderful to see the Theravada Foundation of Poland welcoming Rainbodhi, including Rainbodhi, making sure that Theravada Buddhists in Poland understand that queer Buddhists are welcome, included, valued, loved. And there's a concern for queer Buddhists' well-being. This is compassion. We want to make sure that as Buddhists, we don't cause any more unnecessary suffering for our queer Buddhist community. And this compassionate motivation also helps in our Buddhist community generally, and also helps in society generally. People will listen to religious voices. People will listen when the Theravada Foundation of Poland says, yes, we include queer Buddhists on our YouTube channel. We include them as part of our community. We welcome and love them. This is a beautiful thing. This is compassion in action. And as queer Buddhists, we embrace our queer family. We care about the suffering of our queer siblings. This is compassion. This is not political. This is not identity politics. This is not some sort of queer agenda. This is spiritual. This is spiritual practice. Our concern for our queer family everywhere is part of our spiritual practice. And then we have this other value, this value of wisdom. We have the Buddha's teachings. We're so fortunate, so very fortunate that the Buddha taught out of compassion so that we can come out of suffering. We have a path that he rediscovered for himself and showed us the way so that we can follow that path all the way to the ending of suffering, that is nibbana, enlightenment. And this is why those teachings that the Buddha taught out of compassion, things like the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Noble Path, the Four Brahma Viharas, things like compassion that we just practice. This is such powerful information for us. This is how we start to develop wisdom. We see for ourselves. And this is what wisdom is. When we understand for ourselves. So we understand, what is the mind like when it's full of hate and anger? What are the results that minds like hate, anger, cruelty, what does it lead towards? Well, it leads to suffering for us. Our mind is polluted by these things. It might lead to suffering for others, will hurt other living beings. And so we start to see with wisdom, when this mind is like that, I feel like this, and that is the result that happens. But when my mind is free from hatred, cruelty, ill will, anger, when it's free from those things, my mind is like this, feels good, it feels nice, it feels clean, it feels open, it feels beautiful. And then we start to understand for ourselves. And this is wisdom. We're developing wisdom. And so this compassion practice that we did today, we developed in our own mind compassion. I asked you at the end, how do you feel now? If you can see that link between the practice and the result, this is how we start to develop wisdom in our life. And we can apply this kind of understanding to many other things that have been taught by the Buddha. We hear the teachings that he taught out of compassion. We understand them, we practice them, try to work out for ourselves. And then when we have understood something for ourselves, that is wisdom. And so this is how we make progress on the path. And that's why I wanted to share with you today these 3 values of Rainbodhi: inclusion, compassion, and wisdom. And so I hope that this teaching will be of benefit to you now or in the future. And I want to congratulate you for coming together as a queer Buddhist community in Poland. And I want to celebrate your queer spirituality with you, and to remind you once again that you are part of a queer family internationally of Buddhists just like you, and that we are part of a queer history of Buddhism. We are part of the queer future of Buddhism too. And you belong and you are loved. And I wish you the very best on your journey to come out of suffering. May you attain freedom from suffering. May you attain enlightenment. So now we have some time for some questions.
Maybe I will start with some question. How to deal with misunderstanding and sort of homophobia among the Buddhist society. Not all Buddhists are so very welcoming for the rainbow, and we had some bad comments about this meeting of Rainbodhi, and how to deal in the daily life with such comments and such homophobia.
Yes, thank you very much for asking that question. So for those people who perhaps have a bad attitude towards queer Buddhists or to queer people, rainbow people generally, there's something in there which has some resistance, some ill will, some thought of unkindness, some fear, maybe some anger behind. And these people are suffering. They're suffering now because their minds are polluted by these kinds of thoughts. Take something like anger. You know, when people get angry, they look ugly. They look like little demons. You know, their face turns red, becomes contorted. And their mind is like this boiling water. It's bubbling and boiling with anger and hate. They have no peace. They have no peace. And so their mind is like that. They are suffering themselves. And they cause suffering because of ill will, of anger or hate. They can act in ways that are hurtful. They can say things that are cruel and unkind. they cause harm and suffering to others. This is bad karma, right? Having this kind of mind that hurts others by actions of body, speech, or mind is bad karma. That's what the Buddha said. This leads to bad results for them. And so when we understand like this, we see that they are suffering. We know that they will also suffer in the future too. And so we have compassion for them. That doesn't mean that we don't speak out against what they say. We don't push back. We don't work hard to challenge oppressive and prejudicial speech or actions. We do. And there's actually good examples of this from the Buddhist texts. There was a time when the Venerable Sariputta, who was the Buddha's right-hand man, and this Venerable Sariputta was engaged in conversation with someone who was kind of giving him a lot of hassle, like giving him grief, basically, kind of mocking him and being a bit nasty. And there was another monk, Venerable Ananda, standing nearby, and he did nothing. He did nothing. He just stood there and watched. And later the Buddha admonished him and said, "What are you doing? You know, there is a monk who is being hassled here." And Ananda said, "Well, I thought that I would just have equanimity." And the Buddha's like, "Don't have equanimity, have compassion. Do something about it." And so, you know, we shouldn't just sit back. We shouldn't just allow bad things to happen. We should, out of compassion, out of care and concern, like developing more inclusion and reducing things like hate, reducing things like prejudice, homophobia, transphobia. We need to work towards it. And that's not identity politics. That's not like social programming or being woke or whatever. This is spiritual work. And this is something that I've had to do with Buddhist communities here in Australia and Buddhist communities overseas as well, because there is this entrenched homophobia, transphobia that is conditioned. It comes from exposure to ideas. It comes from copying what other people are doing. It's not something that people have inherently. It's not something that belongs to them. It's something that they can let go of. And one of the ways that they can learn to let go of this is understanding the harm that it causes. And this is why in our booklet, Welcoming the Rainbow, which you can read in the Polish, we said that if Buddhist organizations have views that are harmful to LGBTQIA+ people, this is a form of abuse. It's abuse. This is very harmful because our spiritual spaces need to be welcoming and inclusive of everybody. And there's no room for hate. There's no room for prejudice or ill will in Buddhism. Buddhism welcomes everybody, doesn't discriminate. And the Buddha himself, he rejected the caste system of ancient India and said everyone is welcome regardless of their caste. The Buddha worked with people from all sorts of backgrounds He taught sex workers, kings. He taught people with leprosy, people who were beggars. The Buddha didn't discriminate. He welcomed all. And so this is our model, And if people have homophobia or transphobia within the Buddhist communities, it's not part of Buddhist culture or practice. It's something that they need to be challenged on, they need to be educated on, and they need to understand the consequences of their actions. So this is what I would say. And the same in our broader society. There's horrible things around the world that happen to our queer family. There's the death penalty still in many countries for being queer or trans. There's things like imprisonment, torture, and all sorts of horrible legal things. I understand in Poland too, there's a lot of oppression and a lot of prejudice. And we need to be brave. And when it's safe to do so, we need to speak out against it. And we need to support each other to continue doing this work out of compassion for future generations, so that our queer siblings in the future have an easier time. And it's spiritual work.